Hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast Twitch channel. My name is Michael, and we're here tonight for another episode of Detention Live. Joining me as always is my co-host Chris. Chris, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I pointed up because on my screen he's above me. I have no idea how we are in relation to the screen. And joining us tonight as a special guest co-host, we have Eric. Eric is also known as Airborne Ham on Twitter. And Eric here is tonight to hang out with us, but also to talk about a game he is working on that it's also very kind of near and dear to my heart because it's a GMless game, has some overlap with movies, though more horror for him than action for me. So Eric, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody.
So Airborne Ham, I got to ask, what's that handle? Where does that come from?
In freshman year of high school, I needed a gamer tag for Xbox Live, and I didn't want to press the random gamer tag name. And I thought, Flying Pig, let's do something different. So it's Flying Pig, but worded wrong.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Ham. Look, it's my cat's making.
I see that. So actually, I lived in Cincinnati for many years, and they actually have the Flying Pig Marathon that they do there every year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So when you say Flying Pig, I went to that as well. But yeah, so we're here tonight for Detention Live. It's our kind of our loose format TTRPG talk show. We're going to do some improv games. We're going to do some silly stuff, but we are also going to talk about Eric's Kickstarter. So we're going to do that in a little bit later. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Anything you want to share with strangers on the internet?
Yeah, sure. I've been running and playing RPGs since middle school, and didn't actually get into real published games until a few years after that. So we just my experience with TTRPGs started out as roll a d6, and we'll just sort of talk about what happens, and then graduated into rules of books of rules and stuff. But now these days I design and run LARPs, mostly action LARPs, and I run and write modules for Dystopia Rising Wisconsin these days. If you don't know about Dystopia Rising, it's a post-apocalyptic boffer combat horror LARP.
Okay.
But there's branches all over the country. There's one in Indiana that's pretty close to, that's the other Midwest one. We've got one in Wisconsin. There's a bunch on the East Coast and the West Coast. But I do a lot of LARP design, and so that's where a lot of my experience these days in game design comes from.
Nice. I run a murder mystery LARP at our convention every year, Catacon. I call it, it's a D&D inspired LARP because every character has a D&D style ability. Some of them actually roll D20s on occasions. But it's a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. And then I also put together a Scooby-Doo Dread game, which is basically a LARP. It uses Dread, but it is almost 100% just role play, and it's so much fun. So I've never actually LARPed, but I have designed two kind of LARPs. I don't know if that's the usual way it happens or not.
My experience with LARPing is that you find somebody runs or plays in a LARP, and you just see it and then go, yeah, I could do that, and then you find a way to do it yourself. The LARP we ran what we called a micro LARP in my hometown here for we had 30 people every month. We did a monthly game for 3 years until COVID stopped us. And it was always, we made new mechanics every month. We made a whole new story. Every character was new. It was a whole production every month. And that was started at a local college, and they stopped doing it. And so the ones that were running it who had graduated, we all kind of looked at each other like, do we want to just do this out of the campus, not on campus? And we did it for 3 years until we couldn't anymore.
Well, it's sad to hear that it had kind of died, but hopefully maybe it'll make a comeback. If not with you, then maybe the younger generation. I want to shout out a geek of one's own. Liam is in chat with us. He's hanging out for a little bit. We both had an opportunity to guest on his show fairly recently. But yeah, we're going to jump into the show as we always do here. We're going to start with what we call extracurricular. Well, actually, just quickly, my internet's terrible, even more so than usual. But it seems like Eric and Chris's is fine. So I may robot it out a little bit, but hopefully everyone else is fine. But we're going to do extracurricular. This is where we just talk about what we've been up to recently, books we've been reading, TV shows we're watching, movies, games we're playing or designing, just whatever, again, you want to share with strangers on the internet. Chris, I will start with you. What you been up to, buddy?
Well, I have strangely been hooked on this show called The Librarians.
I've heard of this one. I haven't watched it, but I've heard of it. I'm watching it on Hulu. I think it was on TNT, I think maybe, or one of those stations. It's basically, there's this library that is in another dimension, and there's artifacts throughout history that have been stored there. And every episode they have some other new, thing they have to resolve. Usually it has loosely tied with mythology or something new magic comes in. Stories are not great. I am hooked on how dedicated the actors are to just performing everything so well, even though it's not a great line, but they knock it out of the park. Like their dedication to it has just got me so amused. And it's kind of a fun little show. Like, don't believe or forget what you know about mythology. Right.
When they're talking about Fortuna, the goddess of, I think it was the Roman or Greek goddess of luck, and she's stealing luck by blowing kisses through the camera. Okay, just forget it. Like, just go with the story. Like, I'm just enjoying it because it's very lighthearted. And when I'm not watching that, we're watching the newest season of a show called You, which is kind of the opposite. Not so lighthearted, a little more dark, but I've been enjoying that too. And really doing some more work on the Dragonlance game, as you can see, my little banner behind.
Nice.
Still doing that every other Thursday. So tomorrow will be our third session where they might actually not just role play and go fishing. They might actually get into some combat, depending upon how the players go about it.
Combat's overrated.
Use some mechanics.
Yeah, well, we have been. I was very entertained in the first session when they actually had to fight some draconians, and they're like, I want to roll to identify that. I'm like, roll away. I rolled a 16. I'm like, you've never seen it. And the next person's like, well, I want to try a different skill. Go ahead. I rolled a 12. You've never seen it.
Never seen it before, yeah.
And one of the other players is just laughing because he knows the Dragonlance lore that they've never been on the Kryn until now. So afterwards, he's like, so what if I'd rolled a 20? I'd be like, you've never seen it.
Yeah. But you're confident you've never seen it before, which tells you it's something new.
Yeah. So I've been having fun with that. Otherwise, just working a lot, running the office and doing that stuff. But really looking forward to the faculty retreat in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Two and a half, I guess.
2.5, yeah. That'll be a lot of fun to just kick back and relax and play some games. And it's only a week after my birthday, so Bob said he's bringing old fashions, so Bob might be my new best friend for the weekend.
Fantastic. So I'm gonna go to Eric next. So Eric, tell us again, talking to strangers on the internet. I actually want to quickly mention I had read a Geek of One's Own comment, and it said, just gonna lurk while I get hammered by work. I thought it said hammered at work. Those are very different statements. Stay safe out there, people. Okay, so I'm sorry, Eric. So what would you like to tell us what you've been up to recently? And again, we're going to plug the Kickstarter pretty hard in the next segment, so feel free to touch on it lightly here. We'll go into it more later.
Yeah, I've been surprisingly not as stressed out about the Kickstarter as I thought I would be. The first few days was a lot of like refresh the page, but yeah, but now I'm definitely taking a back seat, just letting it roll. I've been finishing up that, but I've been itching to design other games that I've had in the back burner. We just started my regular Wednesday night gaming group just started our next campaign after a break, so we're playing Changeling.
Okay.
And it's like the hardest World of Darkness game for me that I've ever engaged with. It's very surreal, and I've been struggling to wrap my head around what the game is, but I'm really excited to experience it because it's the most like new thing I've seen out of World of Darkness that we've engaged with. Because usually it's like vampires. You know what vampires are? You're in the real world. You're a vampire in the real world, or whatever. Changeling, it's like, yeah, you're a weird thing that was just tortured forever, and now you're back, and you're not here. You were replaced by a different weird thing, and it's just so surreal. I'm really excited to see where that goes. We did our session 0, and then we played a session. Oh yeah, that's right.
Don't worry, Liam put it in chat while you were talking, so I got you, Liam. And no, it's not water in the other class.
Yeah, see, I will slow it down there, Liam. You don't want Chris to pass out before we're done.
You don't want to get hammered at work.
Well, I get hammered while you're at work.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But yeah, other than Changeling, I've been watching. I watched Peacemaker.
Oh, God, I love that show.
Peacemaker was incredible. Peacemaker makes me really excited for James Gunn to have the DCU.
Yes, I agree.
Show was incredible, very fun. And then me and my partner watched Dead End Paranormal Park, and it's an incredible, cute little it's like a kids show, but it's like, you know, Gravity Falls.
I know of it, haven't watched it.
So Gravity Falls also very good, but Dead End Paranormal Park is like the same kind of monster of the week, but it builds up this big, large overarching plot and world with all of their weird monsters and mysteries, and it's got a lot of queer representation. The main character is trans. It's just a really, really good kids show. And then the second season ends on this huge cliffhanger, and Netflix canceled it.
Of course they did.
So that's where I am.
Yeah. So I would just quickly say, because I know I've mentioned this here before, but I kind of have become immune, I guess, or desensitized to that, because one of the first books I ever remember reading as a child, and it really ignited my passion for fantasy storytelling. It's called The Children of the Dragon by Rose Estes. And I read this, I couldn't have been 10, 12 years old. I still have this book. I have kept it like a treasure, to my chest ever since then. And it ends on a cliffhanger. And she never wrote another one. She had time. I'm pretty sure she's passed now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it basically ends with some spoilers. There's a dragon. It's got some eggs. There's some young kids who take one of the eggs, and there's a bad man who takes one of the eggs. At the end of the book, both eggs hatch, setting up this big dragon conflict. Never. In my own head, I've imagined what was going to happen, but yeah. So I've kind of desensitized to the whole cliffhanger and then nothing since I was like 10 years old.
Why don't you write the sequel?
Because that would take work and effort.
Fair.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Fair.
Yeah. You got to imagine that the publisher went, you need to set it up to be a trilogy. You got to write a trilogy because it's fantasy.
Yep.
And she just wrote the end to set up the trilogy and went, I don't really.
Yeah, she set it up. But then she's just like, suckers? Check. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, this was well before social media. Maybe there's a reason why there wasn't another one. But as a young boy, I'm always like, damn it, I want to do it.
Yeah, it's a real bummer. I don't know why, Inside Job got canceled after a big cliffhanger at the end of season 2, but that one it didn't feel as bad. For the end of Dead End Paranormal Park, boy, it feels bad. It's just like the worst kind of cliffhanger to end a show on. It's rough.
Again, I know your pain, so I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it feels bad, but it's okay. We're starting Legend of Korra.
Okay.
We just finished the Avatar, The Last Airbender. I had never seen it before, so we're starting We're starting Korra. So I'm excited for that because it's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah, I also had never watched Last Airbender, and then my youngest, I think 2 or 3 years ago, got into it, and he just kept wanting to talk to me about it. Like every day, he'd be like, "Dad, I'm going to talk about this show." And I knew people online who were like, "It's like this great show," so I'm like, "Okay, fine, I'll watch it with you." And the first 4 or 5 episodes are really just hardcore kiddie stuff. I'm like, I don't see this. I don't know why people are talking about it. I stuck with it, and by the end, I'm like, ugly crying, going, "I get it. I understand." It is. It's such a good show. I'm really glad I stuck with it, and it was a nice little moment for me and Jacob to kind of bond over that. Yeah. I do remember that meme though. I'm sure you probably have seen it. It's like when I watched the Airbender, and it's like Aang in the middle of some kata, bending fire and air and fighting off somebody. And it says when my mom walks in the room, and it's that one episode where all the girls go to the beach, and they like hypersexualized
children,
them walking to the beach in bikinis. And it's just like this weird moment.
That's not good.
Yeah, it's every time. Yeah. I'm sorry, Chris, I stepped over you there, buddy.
No, you're good. I was just saying, I really liked it. What I liked about The Last Airbender is it kind of matured with the audience. Mm-hmm. Which is what I really liked about the original Clone Wars, that it got a little more serious as it went through seasons. So that's just one of the things I liked about it.
And I think it's part of the like general trend in like, I guess, kids shows, children media these days, is that a lot of it is just like good television. A lot of kids shows these days, apart from like Bluey and Pet Patrol, but like a lot of kids shows are like genuinely good television shows that just happen to be cartoons.
I want to say, though, that I've heard Bluey is actually an amazing show. I have not watched it, but I know people who swear by Bluey being like the best kids show in the history of the world. So Paw Patrol, I agree. Terrible. Hated that show. But Bluey, I haven't watched it because my kids are too old, but I've heard nothing but good things about Bluey.
All right. I'll have to check Bluey out when I'm done with Dogs in Space. And Dogs in Space is genuinely good television.
Okay.
Like
fair.
Kids shows, really good shows. Like, no joke, they're good cartoons.
Well, I think it's like going back to the days when you would like try to sell cigarettes to kids. If you get them hooked early, you'll keep them forever. So if you have a good show, and then that's how you get 15 seasons of a show these days.
Or it's the same kind of thing. Like Pixar makes some of the best movies. Pixar's movies are phenomenal movies, and it's because you got to make shows that make the parents want to watch. Right?
Yeah, it's good for kids and adults. Yeah. All right. So as for myself, I am continuing my Arrow watch. As I mentioned before, I tried multiple times to watch it. I kept falling off because I think it gets pretty bad. I have gotten farther than I've ever gotten. And in some ways it has gotten better. I've kind of gotten over that hump, but it's still just not like I don't know if you know, Eric, I do a Smallville rewatch podcast. I love Smallville, even though there's a lot of episodes in it that aren't very good either, but just as a whole, I really like it. Arrow has been a difficult watch for me, but I'm still pushing through. I try to watch 2 or 3 episodes every week. Sometimes I'll watch 2 or 3 in a day, just as my schedule allows. We finished Lockwood and Co., which is it was on Netflix. It's based on a children's or a YA book series. And the author of that series wrote a trilogy of books that I read years ago. And I definitely was an adult. It's a YA novel, but I really liked them. And so when I found out it was the same author, I definitely, we dug into it. I do like it, but I feel like the book series might be better. So I'm thinking about maybe circling back and actually reading the book. Because there's a lot of things that like I want to know more about the rules and the world, and I feel like I'm constantly lost. Like they're just saying things like the source and cover and feelings and the problem. Like I don't know what any of that means. Context clues has helped me a little bit, but I think I would like the book version better. We actually talked about just today on the car. We're talking about maybe rewatching Peacemaker again. It will be my 3rd time through. I loved that show. So saw Ant-Man and Quantumania. I don't think it's great, but I also don't think it's terrible. It doesn't deserve that 47% Rotten Tomatoes score. It's much better than that, but it's not great either. I'd say it's like a B. I'm glad I saw it in the theater. I had a good time, but it's also disposable. Jonathan Majors, awesome as Kang, like absolutely steals the show. But I don't know. I have a Kickstarter. Yeah, let's touch on that quickly. So next week, we're now 6 days away from the launch of the Action 12 Cinema Kickstarter. So that's very, very exciting, but nerve-wracking because I still have some pieces that are falling into place currently. I'm supposed to get the first draft of the video tonight, so I get the chance to review it, offer some feedback, and try to get it finalized. And then there's just a lot of moving pieces and parts. I'm sure, again, Eric, you know kind of how that goes. I've run multiple Kickstarters before, but always for our event, never for an actual book. So it's a whole different kind of ballgame. So it's exciting, but nerve-wracking. And then the last thing I will say is I finished my last audiobook. I mentioned it before. I finished Revival by Stephen King. Excellent read. And I was shopping and I was like, what do I want? And I've actually decided to go back and re-listen to the Heir of the Empire trilogy, the original Thrawn novels by Timothy Zahn. And I got the first one on Audible, and it's not a cast production, but there are different voices, like the same. I don't know if it's the same guy or not, because like his Leia and Han voice aren't very good, but his Yoda is spot on. So I feel like maybe they've got somebody else doing the Yoda voice on times. Not that there's a lot of Yoda, but every now and then. And then there's an Admiral Akbar, a couple lines. It sounds just like that. So I don't know how that working out, but very good. If you didn't know, the Timothy Zahn novels, very good. And it kind of makes me wish for the days when we all assumed that would have been movies 7, 8, and 9. Yeah. As much as I love The Last Jedi, that trilogy as a whole,
not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah. All right. So with that out of the way, we're going to jump into our first improv game. This improv game is called 10 Things. The idea here is that we will take turns prompting each other in order to kind of come up with a list of X that fit the prompt. The idea is immediacy is better than immediacy is better than accuracy. So if you get a list of 10 things quickly, better in terms of the game than taking your time and actually come up with a list that makes a bit of sense. Eric, you're the guest tonight, so you get to choose. Do you want to go first in terms of being prompted to deliver a list, or would you like to go first in terms of prompting Chris or I to give our list?
I'll deliver a list.
Perfect. All right. Chris, do you have one?
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I always like to ask people about names because names are just, I don't know. I have a fascination with them. I've gotten to name a few things, well, most of the time poorly, including my kids, especially someone I talked to is running a Kickstarter. So I like to ask if, for whatever reason, you could not have named your game The Last Hand, what are 10 alternate names for your game?
Okay, 10 alternate names for The Last Hand, a horror role-playing game. It is out there.
One.
Unknown horror.
Two.
Something stalking you.
Three.
A dangerous creature.
4.
A monster outside.
5.
You can't escape it.
6.
The Texas Hoarder Hold'em.
7.
Horror cards.
8.
Monster cards.
9.
And jokers are really bad.
10. That was, in fact, a list of 10 things. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. So to keep the chain going, you will then prompt Chris. So what is your prompt for him?
All right, Chris, I don't know you very well. I'm going to get to know you really well with this question. What are 10 things you've done that surprised you?
Ooh, wow, that's a good one. Well, this will hit home for you for the first one. Earned a knighthood in the LARP I am in.
1.
I've been married for almost 21 years.
2.
Found a woman who was willing to put up with me for 23 years.
3.
Oh, boy, surprised me. Raised a super smart kid that's going to go into the Air Force, ROTC, and a bunch of other stuff.
4.
Started podcasting.
5.
But still podcasting.
6.
Boy, got to management at my company. Never thought
7.
anybody would do that. Let's see. Actually spent money on a nice computer.
8.
Boy, this is a good one. I like this one. That surprised me in life. Oh, cut my long hair.
Ooh, using long hair. That's exciting.
Yeah,
for me.
well, when I was younger. And currently do not have a pet.
10. That was, in fact, a list of 10 things. Alrighty. So then, Chris, you will close this loop by prompting me, sir.
Well, you got a Kickstarter coming up.
I do.
So 10 emotions that you're either dealing with or going to deal with.
Anxiety.
1.
Depression.
2.
Mania.
3.
Excitement.
4.
Nervousness.
5.
Greed.
6.
Anger.
7.
Bargaining.
8.
What's the other one after that? Acceptance.
9.
And joy.
10.
Yay!
Hey.
That was, in fact, a list of 10 things. Awesome. All right. So again, for tonight, for used books, normally what we do is we talk about a game that one of us has ran or played. We look for lessons learned, things that went really well that we've tried to carry over into new games, or maybe something we tried that failed miserably, but we learned from it, either not to do it or not to do it that way. But tonight we're going to do things a little bit differently, and we've done it this way before. But we have a guest on the show who has a currently running Kickstarter. So right this very moment, you can go and check out The Last Hand. I'm throwing the link into Kickstarter again. Eric and I had a chance to play the game on a Geek of One's Own stream just a few days ago. It should still be available there. I think it falls off after about a week, but it should still be there right now. I'm sure you probably demonstrated some other places as well. But it's kind of close in some ways to what I'm doing at Action 12 Cinema, and that's what really drew me to want to participate. It is a GM-less game, like mine is, except yours is more in the vein of horror, and it uses a poker-style mechanic. As a recovering poker addict, I always say that half joking, it interests me as well. So basically, for our used book session, we're just going to talk about your game. We're talking about where the idea came from, any sort of mechanics, all that kind of good stuff. So just kind of just tell us and the audience where it came from, why you love it, why people should support it.
Yeah, so The Last Hand is a horror role-playing game. It's for GM. It's a GM-less game. It's got no prep. It's one of those games like Action 12 Cinema. But yeah, it came about because I play a lot of like no prep, play to lose horror RPGs are some of my favorite. 10 Candles is a really good example. Love 10 Candles. The Zone is really good. Just had a huge Kickstarter a couple of months ago. But they all require a GM, and they all require that or the Zone doesn't. The Zone does a really good job. The Zone's great. The Zone basically did what I did better, but
but still support this one.
Support this one too. This one's great for different reasons. But yeah, 10 Candles and Dread are like play to lose horror games, but you need a GM, and the GM needs to have planned things ahead of time so that you can play a cohesive story. And I usually break out horror games and one shots and stuff when somebody's missing for an RPG night, our weekly group, and I don't want to prep anything, or nobody wants to prep anything, or there's no time to prep anything. So GM-less games are good for that. No prep games are good for that. And I wrote The Last Hand after watching Bird Box, which is a detail I don't like telling out loud, but I keep doing. And I went, oh man, I really like the fact that you don't know what the monster thing is. I bet that would be cool. And so The Last Hand is a game where there is a monster. You are inside a safe house, and over the course of the game, you slowly learn what the monster is, and so that creates that there is an unknown and nobody here knows what it is, and you slowly discover it without needing a GM to have planned anything. And it creates a tension and kind of like that overwhelming odds that is constantly bearing down on you by playing with cards, by emulating Texas Hold'em. Sort of the way that 10 Candles has like the candles blow out. Oh no, that is a bad thing we had no control over. And in theory, Dread has the tower could fall over at any time, but I have the problem where our group is just pretty good at Jenga, and so we'll like not knock the tower over in an entire 4-hour session, and so you never actually have the release of tension. So The Last Hand uses playing cards, and you play them out as community cards like Texas Hold'em with a flop, and then you have to remove them as threats with the cards in your hand. And every scene, you're constantly getting more cards played, and you only have the card like limited tools to deal with it every turn. So eventually the threat builds up and builds up and builds up because you can't deal with everything every scene. And then there's a turn where, oh, we have the cards we need, and you can clear a bunch of cards, and now some of those problems that you dealt with, or problems that were serious, are dealt with, and there's a relief of tension, and then the problem keeps coming back, and it's you played it. It does that thing. Yeah.
And again, I had a fabulous time. So Liam, if you're still here, do not take this as a criticism, but the poker addict in me cringed every time he dealt cards to it each time rather than going around and around. I was just like, that's not how poker works. But but I actually thought that was a really interesting mechanic. I would like to play it in person just because the digital interface was a little bit wonky for us. Again, it was only because we were trying to let the audience see the cards so they could play along. There were lots of ways we could have done it differently, but then that wouldn't have been there. Right. But the idea of playing it where we don't know what other people have, it would have probably been a little bit more antagonistic in a way. I just thought that would be interesting concept.
Yeah, it creates the kind of like the warranted distrust but obligatory cooperation you see in a lot of horror movies, like the Walking Dead, Bird Box, but pretty much all of them, where you go, we're a bunch of survivors and we don't know each other, so we don't trust each other, but we have to work together to not all die right now. And so the game naturally does that when you can't see each other's hands, where you look it around and you're like, well, can we deal with this problem right now? Because I can't, and I think we should. Because with the public hands, it still played well. It was fun. We still told a fun story. But yeah, you don't have that unknown. It removed an aspect of unknown. Unknown is a big aspect of horror. So
right. Scurvy Knave has jumped in the chat to say that they love the distrust but cooperation idea. I do think that fits very well with the horror kind of theme that you're going for there, because you see that a lot in horror movies where there is a distrust because I don't know you, you don't know me, but we're in this untenable situation together, and we're either lost, said at best, live together, die alone situation.
Right.
So I know, Chris, you weren't able to play in the game, but you have played my game a few times. What is your experience overall with GMless games? Other than mine, have you played any of these before?
I've played a couple others. I enjoy them. I like the cooperative, not world building, but building that story and working together to build that, well, in your case, the tension for the horror. I'm a big fan of horror games. Like everybody knows, I'm a big fan of Shadow of the Demon Lord. I like the idea of that dread building up and that tension, but it's not always just a monster.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when I run Shadow of the Demon Lord, spoilers for anybody who wants to play, the monsters really aren't monsters. It's usually something that's a humanoid or a human,
right,
that's really behind it all. I like that aspect. I like the idea that you don't know what the monster is until you get there.
Mm-hmm.
I hate horror movies where 10 minutes into it, you're like, I don't need to see that. Like, I like the idea of not knowing what it is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And building that up. And I will say that there's a difference between horror and gore.
Yeah. Slashers are a different type of movie.
I don't consider them horror.
Yeah.
Horror movies to me need to build up that tension. Like you said, Bird Box. Like I watched that not too long ago. I didn't dislike it. I felt it was a little slow. They could have moved it on a little faster, but
it's a fine movie. I wouldn't say, I'm not proud that Bird Box was the inspiration for The Last Stand.
Well, fair enough. But I liked how you never really saw the evil that was always there. Mm-hmm. But the way that they acted and the way that they would run from it and the description of how it changed people, that to me was what horror should be. Mm-hmm. And maybe not even horror, more suspense in that case.
Yeah. One of the examples I use for The Last Stand a lot, I don't know if you've seen Apostle or The Ritual. Like a lot of,
I've seen The Ritual.
Yeah, a lot of like folk horror or like those movies where it's like a bunch of people who go out into the woods or to a new place, and then something weird happens, and then that there's something. There's gonna be something, but you don't see it. You don't really know what it is. In The Ritual, they go out to go hiking or whatever, and then like weird stuff. They come across some spooky stuff, and then they find like a dead deer, and they're like, that doesn't look natural. So there's something there, and then it's not until like the climax, the end scene, that the big thing shows up, and you see it, and you go, oh, that's scary. And that kind of storytelling is what The Last Hand does really well.
Nice.
That's that. I agree. It's awful to just have like, this is Jason.
Yeah. So I labeled our stream tonight some game design talk because I knew we were going to talk about your game, and I never used that tag before. I thought maybe we get some new people here. So let's honor that a little bit. Tell me a little bit about where the concept of the using the playing cards came from, and how did that evolve over playtesting? Like, did you always use the mechanics as you got to now, or did you get to them over some playtesting?
That's a good question. I think the core of it came about. I wrote the game in about a week, and the core of it was there. Um, where I went, all right, this is how Texas Hold'em kind of works. Let's try to emulate that, and that kind of was always there with the flop. The dealer is like a pseudo GM, so there's always somebody kind of in charge, and that goes around the table. I think the biggest things that changed with playtesting was the like specifics of what cards did. Like very early on, uh, the Joker was just everybody discards their hands. Those cards all become trouble, also, in addition to the current trouble. And the scene ends, and it's just bad. And playtesting, that just sucked and was very hard. So there were a lot of balancing things like that. Yeah, the big things that changed along the way were mostly like those, like the little tweaks that you got from playtest, and you went, oh, this just doesn't work. Like we needed better descriptions for what different suits were. I had a blind playtest from one of the contributors who wrote a setting for my the expanded settings book that is part of the Kickstarter you can get, that's got more than just the default Wild West setting. But they play tested it with a group, and they had just read it and played it, and they bounced off of it really hard and had a lot of issues with it. And that's when I kind of went, okay, this game plays like Fiasco. This game doesn't play like other RPGs. I should start trying to write it more as each card is a prompt rather than play a card and the story gets told. Because yeah, it plays more like cards as prompts for improv storytelling than it does where playing cards is conflict resolution. It's not like roll a die, you did a thing. It's not play a card, you did a thing. It's like you play a card, you mechanically and abstractly resolved the crisis, but like use that to tell the story moving.
Right. Hey, are you familiar with Savage World at all? Have you played that?
Yes, I used to. It was one of the first non D&D games I picked up when I was in my youth.
Because I know it has kind of a mechanic. It's like the campfire thing where you draw a card, and the suit of the card, you're supposed to tell one character tells a story based off the suit, like it's about a love lost or a conflict. And I don't know how closely yours prompts mirrored that, but it definitely gave me those vibes, which is a positive thing. It's like that's steal from the best or borrow or however.
Yeah.
One question I did have is because I'm definitely more of an action movie junkie than a horror movie junkie, but I do watch horror movies as well. And the one thing that doesn't happen in your game till the end is player elimination. And I get the idea of a GMless game. It's not fun to get knocked out 20 minutes in and people are playing for 2 more hours, but that is kind of a non-standard thing. In horror, usually you have people dying and there's like 1 or 2 or 3 at the end. Was there ever a phase where you did player elimination? Do you have anything in the book about optional rules for player elimination modes?
I don't. I have played enough games with player elimination and designed enough games by now. I designed and ran LARPs for years, and I've designed a handful of board games. And I've played enough games that player elimination was never on the table. It's one of my big rules. Like when I design board games, role-playing games, anything, it has to play more than 4 people. It can't be an exactly 4-person game. And you can't have player elimination. Those are the big rules. So it never had player elimination. And I think that's my big concession away from horror as a genre is that you can't die in the middle of the story. You can I guess in the earliest play tests, we did have, your character dies, play as an NPC or a new character that shows up so that you can keep playing.
Right.
And I think I scrapped that because it just kind of felt disjointed. You had to like force NPCs into the situation if there wasn't already one or something. So it wasn't always great. It wasn't smooth, and it's easier, and it is less taxing on the players to go, nobody can actually die. And it adds more tension and suspense to the kind of hidden information aspect of the game to go, people will die in their epilogue if you don't work together.
Right.
But, and then I don't think we said out loud, at the end of the game, the last scene is You score a poker hand with any remaining community cards as part of it, and then the cards left in your hand. You try to get the highest scoring poker hand, and if there are any remaining community cards, which through the course of the game are the obstacles, the bad things, a character has to die for every remaining card. So when we played, we had four characters, 4 players, and by the end, we had 3 remaining, or no, we only had 1 remaining card, and so the tiebreaker, the worst hand, came to me, and so my character had to die in the epilogue. And so you get a little bit more agency over your character and over your character's story. But yeah, I guess that is a concession away from horror as a genre.
There's concessions in every game. Like, I don't take that as a criticism. I was just curious. Chris, do you have any other thoughts or questions you want to ask Eric before we move on?
How accessible is it for people who are new to role playing? Because some of the GMless games I've played are pretty intimidating to a new player.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things about. So, in theory, Fiasco is really, really approachable to players who don't know what role-playing games are, because they don't have the preconceived notion that one person is going to tell me my story, and I won't have to work very hard. All I have to do is say what my character does. So you get a lot more of that, like, players are just willing to do stuff. But that hurdle to get to being comfortable telling the story is hard. Like, you have to get the ball rolling. From my experience, the last hand gets that ball rolling a lot faster and a lot easier. There's something called the trouble in the blind, which is basically the initial flop. It sets the scene, and the dealer, every scene has a person who's sort of GMing. They have a little bit more power in every scene to set the scene, and then you move the story forward. You get the ball rolling with the blinds, and so each person next to the dealer kind of adds a detail, and that gets the ball rolling enough that it is a little bit easier. In my experience, is a little bit more new player friendly than like I've played like A Quiet Year, or I played this weird GMless game about gnomes, and they put a lot of onus on the players to like have good pacing and have good sense of like sharing the spotlight, and the last hand kind of bakes a lot of that in. But it is a GMless game. Everybody kind of has to like make the concession that we're here to tell a story together. We're not here to win. Nobody's gonna win. We're all but it is easy to pick up the slack for other people or fill in the gaps for everybody, and the game does get the ball rolling well, I think. It's a good question. Nice. I like these questions because it makes me interrogate my thoughts about my game more, which is good.
Yeah. Well, I've played quite a few GMless games, and the reason that came up is I played one at Gen Con years ago, and the spotlight came onto a new player, and she froze. And I literally thought she was just going to get up and just run away from the table. Luckily, the GM was really good at, hey, okay, cool. Well, let me help you through this and kind of work through it. And afterwards, I said to the GM, this is a rough game for somebody who's new. You're saying, hey, throw something new into the world. Well, this person's new. They don't have a clue. They're like, and I'll admit that, we were playing underwater or like insectoid creatures on a foreign planet, and then it came to her. It's like, what would you like to add? I'm over here thinking, man, I don't even know what I'm going to add.
Yeah.
I'm already trying to figure out, how did we get underwater to insectoids to that was a tough one. But I just remember how that look on her face of almost terror, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's rough.
I've experienced that in some of the Action 12 Cinema playtests, just where you got 3 or 4 people who are really comfortable with improv and one person who's not as comfortable, and it just seems like the game kind of comes to a halt whenever it's their turn. And there's a part of you that's like, oh man, we were like, like you're like playing volleyball and everybody's bumping, setting, spiking, and then it just stops. But that's part of the game. Like, you're going to have people who are on that same level, and what elements do you have to support that person who isn't as experienced as the other? For me, it's the fact that it's based on movies. So if nothing else, just think of a movie and add something from the movie in, which still isn't perfect because there's some people who don't watch movies or don't care or can't think on the fly. But that's kind of what I have baked in. So
and then there's also just the element of like, ideally, in my experience playing role-playing games, I'm playing with a bunch of people I like, and we can just go, oh, I don't know, can somebody help me? And you can go, oh yeah, is this, like, here's an idea, maybe this, and then they can go, okay, yeah, and kind of like, you're all there to tell a cool story together. Part of the preamble in The Last Hand is about collaborative storytelling. Most games have like a, what is a role-playing game section?
Yeah.
I have a section that's just like, hey, like, bounce ideas off of each other, work together. Like, you're here to tell a story together. Nobody should feel uncomfortable about that. It's especially important in horror games. It's really easy to cross lines in horror if you're not with a group of people you know really well. So, like, you're here to bounce ideas. You're here to just, like, tell a cool story as friends, probably. So, like, feel comfortable asking for help if you need it. I think that's just an important part of all role-playing games.
I would agree. And I also think that at the end of the day, you can always say it, you can still just rely on mechanics. Like, ultimately, if you wanted to say, I'm going to use this card to defeat that card, you did that. Or I want to use my insight, or I want to use my deception, I rolled a number. That's fine. Like, that's not the ideal of what I'm going for, but I'm happy to allow that to happen for your comfort at any time.
And you don't have to, like, talk in character. No, like, the GMs that are like, everybody at my table has to talk in character. I was that GM years ago where I was like, if you don't role play in character, you don't get to play at my table. And that's just so weird to, like, what a weird policy to have, because everybody has just different comforts. Like, I come from LARP, so we're constantly in character, but some people just don't have that experience. So, like, everybody should play at their comfort level, and, like, at the end of the day, play your card, roll your dice, and we just move the story forward with that information.
Yep, very much. So just one more reminder. So The Last Hand, it's on Kickstarter right now. There's about 4 days left. I'm going to try to get this episode out a little quicker than we normally do, because our audio only audience is much larger than our streaming audience. So hopefully get a few more people a chance to check it out. So just really quickly, what are the pledge levels? If somebody wants to support you, what are they going to pay? And then we'll move on.
Yeah, so you can get just the PDF is $8. If you just want the PDF of the game, $8. You can get the physical copy also for $12. If you want, I do have an expanded setting book. So the default setting is the Wild West. There's a book of a bunch of different settings with a bunch of different other options. There's an airport where everybody's disappeared, and you're all alone in this airport. And we've got a reverse dungeon crawl kind of thing, where you're a bunch of creatures like goblins or kobolds living in a dungeon, and the horror is somebody coming in to take your stuff and invade your dungeon. We got a bunch of different stuff, a Victorian mansion. I'm missing something, like the Crusade, Knights on a Crusade. So there's a bunch of space. We got someone in space. We got a bunch of different stuff. So that's cool. And that option, you can get both in physical. Right now, we unlocked the stretch goal already. It's fully funded. We've unlocked the stretch goal to get physical copies of both books, so the expanded settings as well. So $24 to get the expanded settings physical book, or you can get both PDFs for $20. So
very cool. Well, I wish you the best of success. Thank you for allowing me to participate in the stream with Liam. I had a great time with it, and can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks. I'm excited too. It's going really well so far, so no stress anymore.
Exactly. Yes. All right. So with that, we're going to move on to our second improv game, and this is Where Have My Fingers Been? And this is sort of an improv puppeteering game where we will once again take turns prompting each other in turn to create a short scene involving two or more individuals that fit the prompt. Eric, you once again are the guest, so would you like to go first in terms of acting out the scene or prompting Chris or I to give our scene?
Boy, I sure would like to act out the scene first.
Fantastic. All right. So, Chris, do you have an idea, or you want me to come up with one?
Go ahead.
All right. So, again, it's very important. New York Tater will flip tables. We have to sing the song. So the song goes, "Where have my fingers been?" I said, "Where have my fingers been?" So would you please sing that song, Eric?
Where have my fingers been? Where have my fingers been?
Your fingers are in a Wild West Saloon casino, and people are starting to disappear, and you suddenly realize that you are the only two people left.
All right, buddy. Give me one more shot. Bartender? Where's the bartender? Oh, there ain't no bartender in this saloon no more, fella. It's just you and me. Oh, well, what happened? I I need another drink. Something happened. It is out there, and it's taking people. Whew. That's her jumping over the bar to the back. Here, we're both going to need a drink before we go out there and deal with this crisis. And they drink, but that's really hard to do with fingers. And they pull their guns.
Also hard to
Run
do with
outside.
fingers.
Also hard to do with fingers. A lot of hand actions on these fingers.
And that's where your fingers have been?
Yeah, that's where the fingers have been.
Awesome. It ends on a cliffhanger. We'll never know what happened.
We'll never know.
All right. So, Eric, then you will prompt Chris to keep the chain going. So, Chris, you must sing the song.
All right. Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers have been riding the scariest new ride at the local theme park.
I can't believe we're doing this again. Oh, get over it, you big wimp. No, seriously. Like, I just had lunch. And you might get to... Oh, God. Here we go. Oh! I knew it. I should have just... Let's go. And that's where my fingers have been.
Yay. Excellent. All right. So then that brings it to me to lower the bar to the ground. So where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Teaching somebody how to play poker.
Okay. All right. So when you get your card, no, just look at them at one at a time. But I want to know what I got. One at a, or you don't look at one at a time. Wait till you get both of them. Okay. All right. So when the bet comes to you, it's called action. So you are the one that gives the action. I raise. No, you bet. But I want to raise it. Well, you're the first to go, so it's called betting. You know, Dad, I'm 3. And that's where my fingers have been.
Yay.
I've actually experienced that because I've taught both my kids how to play poker.
So all right. You taught your 3-year-olds how to play
Not
poker?
one of the 3. They're 13 and 11. And my 13-year-old plays with a wild abandonment. He's actually hard to beat because he will just bet every time.
Always.
And the problem is that I will like, oh, I know he doesn't have anything, so I'll call, but he still have better than me. And so he's now won so much that he has confidence that it will always work. So
don't let him go to a real casino.
No, he would lose everything so fast. But we have played for chore money and stuff. Like
we played for
Dragonlance.
candy at in middle school dances all the time.
Nice.
The not cool kids in the back of the middle school dance playing poker for candy.
Nice. Again, if my kid gets him out to a poker game, he's going to know how to play it and nothing else. So, all right. So now we're going to move on to a section called cryptozoology. This is where we take a look at a monster. Usually it's D&D, but it doesn't have to be. And we're going to talk about ways that maybe we have used this creature in the past. We brainstorm some interesting ways we can use it in the future. Eric, you're bringing the monster tonight. So what are we talking about?
We're talking about ghosts.
Ghosts.
Ghosts, spooky spirits, phantoms, poltergeists, the variety.
All right. And so again, we're not necessarily talking about the D&D version. I do have the 5th edition monster manual out if we might want to look at it. But is there anything in particular about having a ghost as a bad guy or as an encounter that you particularly enjoy? I will shout out AKA Miller72 or Miller72 says hello. Hello to you. Oh, it's Lee Wanika. Hey, Lee Wanika. Nice to have you here with us. So, all right. So back to you, Eric. So what is about ghosts that interests you? Why do you want to talk about them and use them?
I like ghosts because they're an unknown, right? You never know what a ghost is gonna be like because they do a lot of different things in a lot of different situations. You can have poltergeists, you can have possession, you can have like curses, you can have your big old phantoms. In Blades in the Dark, they're just like a natural occurring phenomenon. They're like the scary monster that happens, and like the whole world is built in a way that you need to like deal with ghosts when people die. And they're just like a creature that shows up and is just a threat, right? And there's just a lot of variety you can do with them. So I like them because it's not just an antagonist. It can be a whole bunch of different stuff, and
it can be a puzzle.
It can be a puzzle. It's just human enough that it's sort of human. It's like a person, and humans and people are really, really good threat, as Chris was saying earlier. Like, it's nice when horror or when antagonists or when bad guys are just a person. There's a lot more gray area there, and I think ghosts are close enough to just a person that you get a lot of weird stuff there.
Right. I would just mention again that Lockwood and Co. If anyone isn't familiar with the story or the show, check that out, because that's basically the premise of that show. Is that this is like a England set series, and roughly 50 years ago, ghosts just became a thing, and they refer to it as the problem. And now ghosts just basically pop up all over the place. And in that world, only children can see them. So you have this whole group of like children who are trained to be like these mercenaries. It's a very deadly job, but once you turn 18, you can't see them anymore. So these children soldiers are going out fighting these ghosts. And then there's also the conspiracy about like, where did they come from? And, what, there's like a whole government agency thing. And so that's one of the things that I like as well. Like I said, it can't just be a thing you fight, or it could be a thing, again, like I like the show Supernatural. Maybe you have to find its bones and salt and burn them, and that will take care of it. Maybe they've possessed someone, and that's why this person is acting weird. So you got to take care of the ghost without harming the person that's being possessed. Why are they a ghost? Like, what tragedy caused them to be birthed as a ghost? So maybe that's what you have to figure out, is like, it's like a murder mystery where you got to figure out who did it after the fact to get to sate the ghost's anger, and that will free them. So there's a lot of variety to how you can create encounters that at the heart of it is a ghost. You could even have a Casper type thing. Like a ghost could be a beneficial ally in a moment, where a ghost joins you to fight other specters that you can't see, but it will fight for you. So you have to befriend the ghost in some way. So I really like ghosts as an option too, because I think there's a lot of variety. So Chris, you said many times you like Shadow of the Demon Lord. It's a more dark, gritty, grimy sort of story. In that game or any other, have you used ghosts before? Do you have any thoughts on using ghosts?
I have. One of my favorite times of using it is I actually had the ghost moving items and stealing items from the group. And it was a little morbid, but it was a child who died, and they were playing. And what it actually did was then the players started blaming each other for stealing things. So then it created this really cool role-playing thing where what I thought was just going to be funny of, your sword, you find it in the chimney. Well, why is it in the chimney? Because that's where the kid put it. Like,
right.
That was my logic, but they're like, no, it's your character, Michael, who keeps messing with my character because you think it's funny. And they had this really cool role-playing thing. Well, then they, through role-playing, finally figured out what was going on. And then that ghost actually led them to actually the big bad guy. And then they were able to free the ghost and let him go on to his journey. But I liked it because it turned into a different role-playing scene than what I thought it was going to be. And at the end of it, the characters and the players actually felt more bonded to each other because they actually had now trust. Because, it's a whole, you meet in the tavern type party. Well, then they actually develop trust with each other through going, through this little journey.
Right.
So I had a lot of fun with that. I've used ghosts as clue givers. We're lost. We don't know where to go. Oh, well, you happen to wander into a tomb, and the ghost comes up and says, ooh, check out Mr. Jenkins, type moment. And then they could go over that way. I did that when I was younger, and, I made the puzzle, I call it, too complicated, and the players are like, we don't know what you're trying to get to. And I'm like, but it's right there. It's right in front of you.
It's so obvious. What are you, stupid?
Yeah. So I've used it that way. I've used them to just build tension. You hear noise in the background. You hear the chains rattling. What is it? Well, could be the dungeon downstairs. You don't know.
Right.
Maybe somebody's chained up. Who knows? And then they have to hear the sounds in different areas. What are some of the ways you've used them?
So I played a Shadow of the Demon Lord game, and it never quite got where it needed to. But I really liked this idea, and it's something I probably will move into the future. But there was a reason that they needed what I called a ghost touched weapon. And essentially, it was a weapon that was passed through the form of a ghost. It doesn't hurt the ghost, but by going through the form of a ghost, it imparts some sort of property to the weapon that allows it to be effective against another creature. So the object was, you have this thing, you know you can't kill it, so you got to find a ghost. So that's part one. Where is there a ghost? And you got to get to that place. You've got to get it to manifest. You got to pass your weapon through it and then not die because it's a ghost and you just pissed it off because you shoved a sword through it, and then get away so that you can use that weapon to harm the thing that you were originally after. So again, it was just sort of like pieces and parts put together, but I do like that idea of ghost touch as a property. I know there are like games that have ghost touch, but it's slightly different than that. But that's definitely something I will want to use in the future is making ghost touch a property that weapons can have for against other creatures. What about you, Eric? Any thoughts on the next time you might use a ghost?
Yeah, I really like the idea of ghosts as like residual hauntings. Like, I grew up, my family watched the Ghost Hunter TV show on Sci-Fi, and looking back, that was an interesting decision. But I did learn a lot of fun things to use in fiction. I like residual haunting. I like there's like a lot of different types of things you can do with haunting. And
I just hope they never cancel that show because I really need to know if they ever actually find one.
If you ask them, they have. I really like the variety. Like I like a lot of modern supernatural fiction. A lot of RPGs that I run are like, it's the real world, but I have a tendency towards like the World of Darkness games because of that. And ghosts are a really cool way to go, oh man, there is a haunting going on here, but we need to figure out, is this a ghost that is making decisions? And we have to, like, how do we get rid of it? Like you were talking earlier, there's sort of a puzzle to every ghost because is it making its own decisions? Is it just doing the same thing over and over and over again? The rules to ghosts change pretty much from setting to setting to story to story. So like every ghost has a different way to get rid of it. Is it trying to deal with its unfinished business? It doesn't need to be banished with a ritual. Does it have a weakness to salt or something? And I really like that, like, ghost hunting mini game sort of. So I want to do that, I think. I've got a couple of game designs on the books right now, and one of them I'm dealing with is like a Cold War era kind of like secret agent Hellboy kind of thing, and I definitely want to do some like ghost hunting in there because I really like that.
Yeah, I like some of the supernatural lore around ghosts, like the TV show, where like cold iron, so like you grab a fireplace poker, you can hit it, buckshot, like salt gunshots can affect them temporarily, but ultimately you've got to find the source, the body, and salt and burn it, and that will free it. There are other ways, but that's like the easy, like, if we can get to that, we know we can solve it type of a thing. So I do like that idea as well of, I'm sure in D&D, about looking at, I'm sure there's like probably can only be hit with magic weapons, but if you have magic weapons, then you can just fight a ghost with a sword. And I don't know, like, I love D&D, but that just doesn't fit the idea of a ghost to me. I don't think you should be able to just hit it with a sword till it re-dies or undies. I don't know.
Yeah, ghosts shouldn't have a stat block. That's weird.
I agree with that. So just because we're running a little bit long, we're going to cut it there. But as always, we'll throw it out to the audience. If you have any stories. Rook and Rasper rating with Party of Seven. Thanks for coming and jumping in. I'm sure that's probably Michael and his crew. Yeah. But if you have any interesting ghost encounters, either as a DM that you've used with your players or as a player you experienced that you would like to share, please let us know. Either comment on the episode directly on the website or wherever we post it, Facebook, Twitter, that kind of thing. But we're going to move into the audience Q&A. So it's a great time for everyone to have shown up. So what we do is if there's anybody who's watching who would like to ask a question to any or all of us, should be game related, but doesn't have to be, but we reserve the right to not answer questions if we don't feel comfortable. Now's the time to jump them into chat. And we understand that there's a little bit of a delay. So while we're waiting for chat to maybe catch up, Eric, once more time, where can people find you? Where can they find the game? All that kind of good stuff. Plug away, sir.
I'm Eric. I am Airborne Ham on most social media and the internet. If you want to back or learn more about The Last Hand, a horror role-playing game, you can find that on Kickstarter right now. It ends on Monday, the 26th at around noon Eastern time. So you've got a few days from right now live, and hopefully a little bit of time from whenever this gets posted. But even if you don't, the goal of the funding is to be able to make a website and then have e-commerce and get it into stores. And the goal is to start actually making games. And this is hopefully the first step in that. So you should be able to find it in the future as well. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for
Fantastic. Chris, where can people find you?
Twitter, Burlew_Chris. Otherwise, here every other Wednesday, here every other Thursday. And then starting up, I think in roughly a week and a half, 2 weeks, Mondays, we're going to be streaming what used to be the Redemption Story, but now is going to be rebranded as a streaming show. And we still haven't figured out a name yet, but...
The Redemptioners.
Yeah. We're not getting rid of. We're going to move away from the name Redemption because it's very hard to search for that and not have a lot of religious stuff come up first. So we're trying to find it a little easier for people to find us. So it's going to be a little different format. We're going to be doing more short stories and just more, little tales instead of a longer story, and just having some fun with it. I've requested a couple of just comedic episodes. So it'll be fun. But
nice. As for myself, you can find most of what I do at the RPG Academy. I have a brand new podcast that is launching next month as part of that. My actual job is called the Healthy Minds Alliance podcast. And it is short interviews with people who volunteer through the AmeriCorps service program. And they do some good service work with various host sites. Like I teach youth mental health first aid. Other people are doing other things that are similar. So it's just like a little short 20-minute feel good, learn how these people are impacting the communities they are volunteering in. So if you are interested in that at all, or just want to help me out when it goes live, give it a thumbs up, give it a plus, give it a review to help us get it into people's feeds so that, we can start also growing that. So it's my first professional podcasting job, I guess. I mean, I do have a Patreon, so technically I do get paid for podcasting, but this is a little bit different, and it's very, very exciting, but also a little bit nerve-wracking. So with that, we're going to go to our questions. We haven't had any pop in yet, but we still might. But there is one question we ask every guest, so we'll start with that one, see if any of them pop in. So Eric, imagine that you were being turned into an action figure. I don't mean you're being polymorphed into one, but someone's going to make an action figure based on your likeness and your life. What would be the 3 accessories that come in your action figure package?
I've been thinking about this a long time, just now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first one would be this cat right here. This is
okay.
Munch.
Hey, Munch. He's a key cat.
The second one would be that cat over there. That's Abe. The third one would be that cat up there, and that's Stranger.
Nice.
I would have 3 cat accessories for my action figure.
That's going all in on cats.
I'm pretty all in on cats at this point. Somebody needs to help.
Nice. Fantastic.
Just don't get up to 30.
Yeah.
I'm 3. We got 3 cats and we got 2 dogs, and we're not allowed to have any more pets.
Yeah.
It's a good rule. Good rule.
Yeah. Both for your sanity and probably from wherever you live. Yeah.
Yeah, for all sorts of reasons.
All sorts of reasons. Yes. All right. Well, Eric, I had a great time talking to you. I hope you had a good time as well. I hope we've sent a few extra people your way for this Kickstarter. If not now, maybe hopefully tomorrow or Friday. I'm going to try to get this out. Any final words before we sign off?
Well, thanks for having me. This has been great. I've had a lot of fun. I'm excited to add another podcast to my podcast repertoire. I'm really excited for Action 12 Cinema. I'm really excited for that. So I'm looking forward to that. I gotta keep myself in the loop there.
All right. Well, again, just follow me on social media because that's all I talk about anymore.
If you have any upcoming playtests.
So we have one that we're going to do the night the Kickstarter launches. So it will have already launched,
all right.
But we're going to do it on our feed. I think right now I'm planning on playing, but I could step out and just facilitate if you wanted to join in. So just make sure you hit me up later and we'll see if we can work
we'll
out.
Figure out the time because I'm a busy dude also, but I want to play this game. This game seems cool.
Fantastic. All right, Chris, as always, thank you for hanging out, buddy. I really appreciate having you here. Any final words from you before we sign off?
Just go out and check out all these nice Kickstarters.
Yeah, there's a lot. You can listen to my show. I do a show every other week about Kickstarter. So just come to me. I'll tell you which ones to follow, including my own. I've been guesting on a bunch of other podcasts. I had an episode come out today for Snyder's Return. Lovely chat. I had not heard of the podcast before, but they offered to have me on, so I did it. A lovely chat. I'm on another one called Critically Thinking. D&D was another wonderful chat. Both of them are UK, or one's Australia, one's UK. So spreading out globally, but both those were great. I was on on Craig Campbell's RPG R&D podcast. Lovely time. So that should be coming out post launch, but you're going to see me around. If you follow podcasts, I'm going to be everywhere. And then again, I'll just mention Tabletop Journeys because they were one of the first podcast to have us on and do a actual play. Was lovely. And actually Rook and Rasp, since they're here as well, they were technically the first that we did a stream. So I've got a lot of support in a lot of places and I do really appreciate it. But enough about my stuff. So we're going to sign off as we say and as we always do. If you're having fun,
you're doing it right.
So thanks everyone and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.